The thing about family dinners is they're supposed to bring people together. What nobody tells you is sometimes they're just elaborate stage productions where everyone knows their role except the guy paying for the groceries. My name is Pete Collins, and I've been married to Amanda for 17 years. Long enough to know that when she starts dabbing her eyes with the cloth napkin at Sunday dinner, we're about to get another Oscar-worthy performance about the trials and tribulations of being married to me. It's just so hard sometimes, Amanda whispered to her sister Jennifer across our dining room table, her voice carrying that perfect tremor she'd perfected over the years. Pete works all the time, and when he comes home, he's just distant. I looked up from my meatloaf, the same meatloaf I'd been making every other Sunday for the past 5 years, because Amanda claimed she was too emotionally drained to cook for family gatherings. Jennifer nodded sympathetically, shooting me the kind of look usually reserved for men who leave the toilet seat up or forget anniversaries. Marriage requires sacrifice from both parties. Amanda's mother Linda chimed in, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. Some people just aren't willing to do the emotional work. The emotional work. That was Amanda's favorite phrase lately. Everything was emotional work. Taking out the trash was emotional work. Fixing the leaky faucet was emotional work. Apparently, even sitting here eating dinner while she performed her weekly one-woman show was emotional work. Our daughter Ellie, 16 and sharp as a tack, rolled her eyes so hard I worried she might strain something. Our son Max, 13 and quieter than his sister but twice as observant, just kept eating, though I caught him glancing between his mother and me with that calculating look kids get when they're trying to figure out which parent is full of it. Dad's not distant, Ellie said, her voice carrying just enough teenage attitude to make Linda purse her lips. He coached my softball team all summer and helped Max build that computer setup in his room. That's not the kind of emotional availability I'm talking about, sweetheart, Amanda said, reaching across the table to pat Ellie's hand. You'll understand when you're older and in a relationship of your own. I bit back the urge to point out that emotional availability might be easier if Amanda actually spent time at home instead of her increasingly frequent yoga classes and book club meetings and whatever other activities filled her Thursday nights. Instead, I took another bite of meatloaf and watched the show. Pete just doesn't seem to understand that marriage is about more than just providing financially, Amanda continued, her voice getting that distant quality she used when she was really warming up to her theme. Sometimes a woman needs to feel heard, valued, appreciated for who she is as a person. Jennifer nodded along like she was watching a particularly moving documentary. You give so much of yourself, Amanda. You deserve someone who recognizes that. The funny thing was, I used to try to defend myself during these performances. I'd point out the flowers I brought home, the surprise dinners out, the weekend trips I'd planned. But over the past year or so, I'd started to notice something interesting. The more I defended myself, the more elaborate Amanda's victim routine became, so I'd taken to just sitting back and observing, like an anthropologist studying some fascinating tribal ritual. And that's when I started noticing the patterns. The tears always came right after she mentioned feeling unappreciated. The voice tremor kicked in when she talked about emotional distance. And without fail, every single performance ended with her excusing herself to get some air or make a phone call, while the rest of us finished dinner in awkward silence. Tonight followed the script perfectly. I'm sorry, everyone, Amanda said, standing up and pressing her napkin to her eyes. I just need a moment. Sometimes the loneliness just overwhelms me. She walked toward the kitchen, her phone already in her hand before she'd even left the dining room. Through the doorway, I could hear her soft voice talking to someone, though I couldn't make out the words. Linda leaned forward, lowering her voice to that conspiratorial whisper people use when they think they're being subtle. Pete, I hope you realize what a treasure you have in Amanda. That girl has such a big heart, and she's been struggling so much lately. Mom's right, Jennifer added. Amanda calls me sometimes, just crying about how isolated she feels. Maybe you could try being more present when you're home? I nodded politely, the way you do when someone's lecturing you about something they don't understand. I'll keep that in mind. Ellie made a small noise that might have been a snort. Max just kept eating, but his shoulders were tense. In that way, that meant he was listening to every word. Amanda returned a few minutes later, her cheeks slightly flushed, her eyes brighter somehow. Sorry about that, she said, settling back into her chair. I just needed to check on something. The rest of dinner passed in the usual fashion. Linda offered unsolicited advice about marriage. Jennifer shared updates about her perfect life with her perfect husband. Amanda played the role of the long-suffering wife with admirable consistency. And I sat there, nodding at appropriate intervals, while my mind wandered to more interesting topics. Like the fact that Amanda's Thursday night yoga classes had been happening every week for the past 6 months, but she'd never once come home with a yoga mat or wearing workout clothes. or the way she'd started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, or how her book club never seemed to actually discuss any books. But the most interesting thing was the timing. See, I'm an HVAC contractor, which means I spend a lot of time in people's houses, and you pick up certain skills, like noticing when things don't add up, when the story someone's telling doesn't match the evidence you can see with your own eyes. And lately, Amanda's story had more holes than a screen door. After Linda and Jennifer left, with plenty of concerned looks and whispered promises to check on Amanda during the week, I helped clear the table while Amanda retreated to the living room to decompress from the emotional strain of dinner. "Dad," Ellie said quietly as she handed me plates to rinse, "why don't you ever say anything when Grandma and Aunt Jennifer act like you're some kind of terrible husband?" I glanced toward the living room, where Amanda was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for emergency situations. Sometimes, kiddo, the best thing you can do is let people show you who they really are. That's cryptic, even for you. Maybe, but you're smart enough to figure it out. Max appeared in the kitchen doorway, his laptop under one arm. "Dad, can you help me with something upstairs?" In Max's room, he closed the door and turned to face me with the kind of serious expression that looked strange on his 13-year-old face. "I know what Mom's doing," he said simply. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I kept my voice level. "What do you mean?" "The Thursday night thing, and the phone calls, and why she's always crying at dinner but seems fine every other time. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe. Max, whatever you think, you know. I'm not stupid, Dad, and neither are you." He opened his laptop and pulled up what looked like a cloud storage account. "Mom synced her phone to the family tablet for photos, remember? The one I use for school projects?" The cold feeling in my stomach spread outward. "Max, you shouldn't be reading Mom's text messages?" "Yeah, probably not. But I wasn't trying to spy on her. I was looking for photos from last summer for a project, and I saw other stuff." He turned the screen toward me, and there it was. Months of text conversations between Amanda and someone named Greg Fisher. And Greg Fisher, I realized with a sick sort of clarity, was Amanda's ex-boyfriend from college. The one she'd dated for 3 years before we met. The one she'd mentioned running into at the grocery store a few months back. The one who, according to these messages, had been meeting her every Thursday night for the past 6 months. "Dad?" Max's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, scrolling through message after message. Amanda complaining about our marriage, Greg sympathizing and suggesting they meet up like old times. Amanda describing our family dinners, our conversations, our private moments, all twisted into evidence of what a terrible husband and father I was. And threaded through it all, plans. Thursday night meetings at his apartment, careful scheduling around my work trips, detailed discussions about how to handle the situation with me and the kids. "How long have you known?" I asked. "A couple weeks. I wasn't sure if I should tell you or not. But watching dinner tonight, seeing how Grandma and Aunt Jennifer talked to you..." Max shrugged, but his eyes were angry in a way that reminded me he was more grown up than I sometimes gave him credit for. "It's not fair." I closed the laptop and sat down on Max's bed, trying to process what I'd just learned. 17 years of marriage, 2 kids, a house, a life, a future we'd planned together, and Amanda had been systematically dismantling it all, while performing her victim routine for anyone who'd listen. "Dad?" Max sat down next to me. "What are you going to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What do you do when you discover that your wife's weekly emotional breakdowns about your marriage are actually cover stories for her affair with her ex-boyfriend? When you realize that every family gathering has become a stage for her to build sympathy for herself while painting you as the villain? I thought about all those Thursday nights when Amanda came home late, claiming yoga had run long or that the book club had gotten into a particularly intense discussion. I thought about the way she'd started picking fights over nothing, then using those fights as evidence of our communication problems during her Sunday night performances. I thought about Linda's disapproving looks and Jennifer's helpful suggestions about being more emotionally available. I thought about how Amanda had turned our extended family into an audience for her elaborate deception. And then I thought about something else. Jennifer's birthday was coming up in 2 weeks. Another family dinner, another opportunity for Amanda to perform her one-woman show about the trials of being married to an emotionally unavailable husband. "Max," I said slowly, "how much of this conversation history can you access?" "All of it, I think, going back to when she first synced the phone." "And you can print it out?" "Sure. Why?" I stood up and walked to Max's window, looking out at our quiet suburban street. Normal houses full of normal families dealing with normal problems, not elaborate deceptions and performance art masquerading as marriage counseling. Because, I said, turning back to my son, if your mother wants to make every family dinner about how difficult our marriage is, I think it's time everyone understood exactly why that might be true. Max grinned, and for the first time in months, I felt like I might actually be one step ahead instead of 3 steps behind. Dad? Max said as I headed for his door. Yeah? For what it's worth, I think Mom's an idiot. You're a good dad, and you've been a good husband. She's the one screwing everything up. Out of the mouths of babes. The next 2 weeks passed like a strange kind of countdown. Amanda continued her usual routine: Thursday night yoga, Friday morning complaints about how tired she was, weekend family time where she seemed distracted and irritable, and Sunday dinner preparations that always included some comment about how she hoped we could keep things light for Jennifer's birthday celebration. I continued my usual routine too, with a few modifications. I went to work, fixed people's air conditioning and heating systems, came home to help with homework and make dinner. But in the evenings, after Amanda retreated to the living room with her phone, I spent time in Max's room, going through 6 months of text message history. It was like reading a novel about my own life, except written by someone who'd fundamentally misunderstood every character and plot point. According to Amanda's version of events, as told to Greg Fisher, I was a workaholic who ignored my family, showed no interest in her emotional needs, and had checked out of our marriage years ago. She painted herself as a devoted mother and wife who'd tried everything to save our relationship, only to be met with indifference and neglect. The Greg character in this story was understanding, supportive, and everything I apparently wasn't. He listened to her problems, offered comfort during difficult times, and provided the emotional connection she claimed to be missing at home. It would have been a compelling narrative if it bore any resemblance to reality. Listen to this one, I said to Max one evening, reading from a printout of messages from 3 weeks earlier. Amanda tells Greg, Pete didn't even notice I got my hair cut. I could shave my head, and he wouldn't say anything. Max looked up from his homework. Didn't you tell her the haircut looked nice at dinner that night? I did, and then she said it was too expensive and she shouldn't have done it, so I told her she was worth it and took her out for ice cream. Max went back to his math problems. So she's just lying? It's more complicated than that. She's taking real events and reshaping them to fit the story she wants to tell. Like the message where Amanda complained that I'd ruined her book club meeting by asking her to pick up milk on the way home. In reality, I'd texted to ask if she could grab milk if it was convenient, and she'd responded with, "Of course, no problem." But in Amanda's retelling to Greg, it became evidence of my inconsiderate demands on her time. Or the long message thread where Amanda described how I'd ignored her during Ellie's softball tournament. According to her version, I'd spent the whole time talking to other parents and hadn't paid attention to her at all. What actually happened was that I'd coached third base for 6 innings while Amanda sat in the stands scrolling through her phone, and afterward she'd complained that the games were boring and too long. Every story followed the same pattern. Real events, twisted just enough to support Amanda's victim narrative, shared with someone who had every reason to encourage her dissatisfaction with our marriage. But the most interesting messages weren't the complaints about me. They were the ones where Amanda and Greg made plans. Thursday works for me, read one message from Amanda. Pete has a job in Millbrook, so he won't be home until late. We'll have plenty of time. I miss you, read another. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd never broken up. And from Greg, you deserve so much better than what you're getting at home. You know that, right? It was manipulation, plain and simple. Greg was using Amanda's manufactured dissatisfaction to draw her into an affair, and Amanda was using the affair to justify her manufactured dissatisfaction. A perfect circle of deception that left me cast as the villain in a story I didn't even know was being written. The Thursday night meetings had started innocently enough, according to the message history. Coffee to catch up, lunch to talk about old times. But within a month, the conversations had shifted to complaints about me, and within 2 months they were meeting at Greg's apartment every week. Dad, Ellie said one evening as we worked together in the kitchen, is everything okay with you and Mom? I glanced toward the living room, where Amanda was having another one of her lengthy phone conversations. Why do you ask? I don't know. She seems different lately. Angrier, I guess. And you seem, I don't know, like you're waiting for something. Smart kid, just like her brother. Things are complicated right now, Ellie. But whatever happens, you and Max are the most important thing to me. You know that, right? Yeah, I know, but Dad? What? If Mom is doing something wrong, you don't have to protect her from the consequences. Max and I aren't little kids anymore. We can handle the truth. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Amanda slept beside me, her phone charging on the nightstand within easy reach. She'd been quieter than usual at dinner, distracted in that way that meant she was thinking about something she couldn't share. Tomorrow was Thursday, which meant another yoga class and another evening of her coming home with that slightly guilty, slightly defensive attitude she'd developed lately. I thought about confronting her directly, sitting her down and laying out everything I knew, but what would that accomplish? She'd deny it, probably. Or she'd turn it around somehow, make it about my lack of trust or my invasion of her privacy. She'd find a way to make herself the victim of my discovery of her affair. No, I had a better idea. If Amanda wanted to perform her victim routine for an audience, I'd give her the biggest audience she'd ever had. And I'd give them the full script, not just her carefully edited version. Jennifer's birthday dinner was in 3 days. I spent Friday afternoon at the local print shop, a place I'd used before for work estimates and invoices. The woman behind the counter, Sarah, knew me well enough to make small talk while she processed my order. "Big project?" she asked, looking at the stack of pages I'd handed her. "Something like that. I need 3 copies of everything, bound and organized by date." "No problem. Should be ready Monday morning." That evening, Amanda came home from her yoga class in the same state she'd been in for months, slightly flushed, slightly defensive, and eager to change the subject if anyone asked about her evening. "How was class?" I asked, not because I expected an honest answer, but because I was curious to see what story she'd tell. "Fine, tiring. We worked on some challenging poses tonight." She headed straight for the kitchen, avoiding eye contact. "I'm going to grab some water and then take a shower." "Did you remember to bring your yoga mat home this time?" Ellie asked innocently from the couch, where she was working on homework. Amanda froze for just a moment. "What do you mean?" "You always forget to bring it home. I was just wondering if you remembered tonight." "Oh, yes, I left it in the car. I'll get it tomorrow." Ellie and I exchanged a look. There was no yoga mat in Amanda's car, just like there had never been a yoga mat in Amanda's car, because Amanda didn't go to yoga classes on Thursday nights. After Amanda went upstairs, I sat down next to Ellie on the couch. "You know, don't you?" I said quietly. "That Mom's lying about where she goes on Thursdays?" "Yeah, I figured it out a while ago. She's a terrible liar." "How long have you known?" "A couple months, maybe. She started acting weird, and then there were all those phone calls, and the way she keeps talking about how unhappy she is at family dinners." Ellie shrugged. "I'm not stupid, Dad, and neither is Max." "Have you two talked about it?" "A little. We decided we'd wait and see what you were going to do about it." I stared at my daughter, this 16-year-old who'd apparently been watching our family drama unfold with the kind of clear-eyed assessment that adults often lack. "What do you think I should do about it?" Ellie considered this seriously. "I think Mom's been making you look bad in front of Grandma and Aunt Jennifer for months, telling them you're a terrible husband when you're not. And I think she's been lying to all of us about where she goes and what she does. So I think maybe it's time everyone knew the truth. Even if the truth is ugly, Dad, the truth is already ugly. Mom's just been hiding it and blaming you for it, though that's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me and Max, either." Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that makes everything feel slightly ominous. Amanda spent the morning cleaning the house and preparing food for Jennifer's birthday dinner, moving through her tasks with the kind of nervous energy that suggested she knew something was coming, but couldn't quite put her finger on what. I spent the morning reviewing the printed message transcripts one last time, organizing them chronologically and marking the most relevant passages. 6 months of deception, laid out in black and white. Amanda's complaints about our marriage, her meetings with Greg, their growing intimacy, and her systematic campaign to turn our extended family against me. "Pete," Amanda said as she arranged flowers in a vase, "I hope we can keep things pleasant tonight. Jennifer's been looking forward to this dinner for weeks." "Of course," I said. I wouldn't dream of ruining Jennifer's birthday. Amanda gave me a sharp look, as if she'd heard something in my tone that made her suspicious. But before she could say anything, the doorbell rang, and Linda and Jennifer arrived with their usual flurry of hugs and birthday wishes and comments about how lovely everything looked. Dinner proceeded normally for the first hour. Linda updated us on her book club and her garden. Jennifer talked about her job and her latest vacation plans. Amanda played the perfect hostess, making sure everyone had enough food and drink, while occasionally sighing in that way that suggested she was bearing some invisible burden with admirable grace. The kids were polite and engaged, asking appropriate questions and laughing at Linda's stories. I contributed to the conversation when spoken to, but mostly I just watched and waited. "Amanda, honey," Linda said as we finished the main course, "you seem a little tired tonight. Are you feeling all right?" And there it was, the opening Amanda had been waiting for. Her face took on that familiar expression of brave vulnerability, the one she'd perfected over months of Sunday night performances. "I'm okay, Mom. It's just been a difficult week. Marriage is—" She paused, glancing at me with the kind of look that suggested she was being diplomatic for the sake of family harmony. "Well, it's been challenging lately." Jennifer reached across the table to squeeze Amanda's hand. "What's going on, sweetie?" Amanda shook her head, as if she didn't want to burden anyone with her problems. "I don't want to make this about me. It's Jennifer's birthday." "Don't be silly," Jennifer said. "If something's bothering you, we want to help." "It's just—" Amanda's voice took on that tremulous quality that meant the tears were coming soon. "Sometimes I feel so alone in this marriage, like I'm doing all the emotional work, trying to hold everything together, and Pete just isn't present. Even when he's here physically, he's not really here." Linda nodded sympathetically. "Marriage requires effort from both partners, dear." "I know that, Mom, and I've tried so hard. I really have. I've tried talking to Pete about what I need, about feeling disconnected, but he just doesn't seem to understand, or maybe he doesn't want to understand." Ellie and Max had gone very still, watching their mother perform her familiar routine with expressions I couldn't quite read. I felt a moment of doubt, wondering if I was about to traumatize my children by exposing their mother's deception so publicly. But then Amanda continued, her voice growing stronger as she warmed to her theme. "I feel like I'm married to a stranger sometimes. Pete works constantly, and when he comes home, he's just absent. I try to connect with him, to share what's happening in my life, but he's not interested. I might as well be talking to myself." "That must be so lonely," Jennifer said, shooting me a disapproving look. "It is. It really is. And the worst part is, I don't think Pete even realizes what he's doing. He thinks providing financially is enough, but marriage is about so much more than that. It's about emotional intimacy, about being partners in life, about—" Amanda's voice broke slightly. "About feeling like your spouse actually wants to be with you." The tears started then, right on schedule. Amanda pressed her napkin to her eyes, her shoulders shaking with the effort of containing her emotion. "Oh, honey," Linda said, standing up to put her arms around Amanda. "I'm so sorry you're going through this." "Maybe you two should consider counseling," Jennifer suggested. "Sometimes it helps to have a neutral third party." Amanda nodded, still crying. "I've suggested that, but Pete doesn't think we need it. He says everything's fine, but everything isn't fine. I'm drowning here, and he doesn't even see it." I looked around the table at my family, Linda comforting Amanda with gentle murmurs, Jennifer glaring at me with open hostility, Ellie and Max sitting in tense silence, waiting to see what would happen next, and Amanda, the star of her own tragedy, performing her victim routine with the kind of conviction that comes from months of practice. I stood up slowly, reaching into my jacket pocket for the bound transcript I'd prepared. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through Amanda's sobs, "I think everyone should know exactly why our marriage has been so difficult lately." Amanda looked up, her tear-stained face suddenly alert. "Pete, what are you—" "I'd like to propose a toast," I continued, holding up the transcript. "To Jennifer, on her birthday, and to the truth, which I think we've all been missing." "Pete," Amanda said, her voice sharp with warning, "this isn't the time or place." "Oh, I think this is exactly the time and place." I opened the transcript to the first marked page. "See, Amanda's been telling us all about how difficult our marriage is, how emotionally unavailable I am, how lonely she feels. But what she hasn't mentioned is that for the past 6 months, she's been sharing those feelings with someone else, someone very specific." The room went completely quiet. "Amanda," I continued, beginning to read, "has been meeting with her ex-boyfriend, Greg Fisher, every Thursday night, and she's been documenting their relationship in text messages that paint a very different picture of our marriage than the one she's been sharing with us." Amanda's face had gone white. "Pete, stop, please." But I was just getting started. "Let me share some highlights," I said, flipping to the first marked page. March 15th. Amanda to Greg. "Pete didn't even notice I got my hair cut. I could shave my head and he wouldn't say anything." I looked up at Amanda, whose face had gone from white to red. "That was the night I told you the haircut looked beautiful and took you out for ice cream because you said it was too expensive." Linda's arms had dropped from around Amanda's shoulders. Jennifer was staring at me with confusion rather than hostility now. March 22nd, I continued. Amanda to Greg. "Pete ruined my book club meeting by demanding I pick up milk on the way home. He has no respect for my time or my needs." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the text conversation from that night. Here's what I actually sent. Hey, if you're out and it's convenient, could you grab milk? No worries if not. And here's Amanda's response. Of course, no problem. See you soon. Pete, Amanda whispered. Please don't do this. April 3rd, I read. Amanda to Greg. Pete ignored me completely at Ellie's softball tournament. He spent the whole time talking to other parents like I wasn't even there. Ellie's voice cut through the silence. Dad was coaching third base that day. Mom spent the whole game on her phone complaining that it was boring. I nodded at my daughter gratefully, then returned to the transcript. April 10th. Amanda to Greg. I feel like I'm married to a stranger. Pete doesn't see me, doesn't hear me, doesn't care about my emotional needs. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd made different choices. April 10th, I repeated, looking directly at Amanda. That was the day after I surprised you with dinner at that restaurant you'd been wanting to try. The one where you spent the entire meal texting someone under the table. Amanda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, I said, I think you do, because you've been performing this victim routine for months, turning every family dinner into your personal therapy session, making me out to be some kind of monster while you've been lying to everyone in this room. Pete, Linda said uncertainly. Maybe this isn't... May 1st, I continued reading. Greg to Amanda. You deserve so much better than what you're getting at home. When are you going to stop settling for less than you're worth? May 1st, I repeated. Amanda to Greg. I know you're right. Being with you on Thursdays is the only time I feel like myself anymore. Pete has no idea who I really am. Jennifer's mouth had fallen open. Amanda, what is he talking about? May 15th, I read. Amanda to Greg. Thursday can't come fast enough. I need to feel appreciated, to feel desired, to remember what it's like to be with someone who actually wants me. Greg to Amanda. I've never stopped wanting you. You know that. Amanda to Greg. I know. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if we'd never broken up. If I hadn't settled for safe instead of passionate. The silence in the room was deafening. Amanda was standing frozen by her chair, tears streaming down her face. But these weren't the calculated tears of her usual performances. These were tears of panic and shame. June 3rd, I continued relentlessly. Amanda to Greg. Pete suspects something. He asked about my yoga classes. We need to be more careful. Greg to Amanda. Maybe it's time to stop pretending. You're not happy, and you haven't been for years. Life's too short to waste on someone who doesn't appreciate what he has. Amanda to Greg. You're right. I just need to figure out the best way to handle this. The kids, the house, everything we've built together. Max's voice was very quiet when he spoke. Mom, is this true? Amanda looked at her son, her face crumbling. Max, I can explain. Is it true? Max repeated, his voice stronger now. Amanda sank back into her chair, her hands covering her face. It's not what it sounds like. Really, I said, flipping to another marked page. June 20th. Amanda to Greg. I can't keep living this lie. Every family dinner, every conversation about our marriage, I feel like such a fraud, but I don't know how to get out without losing everything. Greg to Amanda. You're not losing everything. You're gaining your freedom, and you're gaining me. Amanda to Greg. Promise me we'll be together when this is all over. Promise me I'm not destroying my family for nothing. Greg to Amanda. I promise. We were meant to be together, Amanda. We both know that. Linda was staring at her daughter with an expression of complete shock. Amanda, how could you? July 4th, I read. While we were at the neighborhood barbecue, Amanda was texting Greg. Watching Pete flip burgers and pretend to be the perfect family man is making me sick. I can't wait to be done with this charade. Ellie's voice was sharp with anger. We had fun that day. You seemed happy. I was acting, Amanda whispered. July 15th, I continued. Amanda to Greg. The kids are starting to ask questions. Ellie wanted to know why I never bring home a yoga mat. I told her I leave it in the car, but I don't think she believed me. Greg to Amanda. Smart kid. She gets that from you, not from Pete. Amanda to Greg. Don't talk about Pete that way. Whatever else he is, he's a good father. Greg to Amanda. A good father who ignores his wife and takes his family for granted. The kids will understand eventually. I looked up from the transcript. That's interesting, isn't it? Even Greg thinks I'm a good father. But according to Amanda's Sunday night performances, I'm emotionally unavailable to everyone. Amanda was sobbing now, her carefully constructed victim narrative crumbling around her. Pete, please stop. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. August 1st, I read, Amanda to Greg. Pete asked me to go to counseling with him. He says he's noticed I seem unhappy and he wants to work on our marriage. Greg to Amanda. What did you tell him? Amanda to Greg. I told him I didn't think counseling would help, that some problems are too big to fix. I closed the transcript and looked around the table. That conversation happened 3 weeks ago. Amanda told all of you that I refused to go to counseling, that I didn't think we needed it. But the truth is, I begged her to go with me. I told her I could see she was unhappy and I wanted to fix whatever was wrong. And what did you tell me, Amanda? I asked, looking directly at my wife. Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. I told you it was too late. You told me it was too late, I agreed. And then you came to Sunday dinner and told everyone that I was the one who wouldn't work on our marriage. Jennifer was staring at her sister with a mixture of shock and disgust. Amanda, how could you lie to us like this? How could you make Pete look like the villain when you were the one having an affair? It's not an affair, Amanda said weakly. We're just... August 10th, I read from the transcript. Amanda to Greg. Last night was incredible. I forgot what it felt like to be truly wanted. Greg to Amanda. You're incredible. Pete's an idiot for not seeing what he has. Amanda to Greg. Had. What he had. I'm yours now, in every way that matters. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the sounds from the kitchen seemed muted, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Linda was the first to speak, her voice cold and disappointed. Amanda Marie Collins. I am ashamed of you. Mom, please, don't. Linda held up her hand. Don't say another word. You've been lying to all of us for months, making us think Pete was a terrible husband while you were sneaking around with another man. And then you had the nerve to sit at family dinners and cry about how hard your marriage was? Jennifer stood up abruptly, her chair falling backward. I can't believe this. Amanda, I defended you. I told Pete he needed to be more attentive, more emotionally available. I made him feel like a failure as a husband. Jennifer, I can explain. Explain what? How you manipulated all of us? How you turned family dinners into performances designed to make Pete look bad while you were cheating on him. Amanda looked around the table desperately, searching for an ally, but found none. Linda was shaking her head in disgust. Jennifer was backing toward the door. Ellie and Max were staring at their mother with expressions of hurt and betrayal. Kids, Amanda said, reaching toward them, you have to understand. Sometimes adults make mistakes. Sometimes marriages just don't work out. Don't, Ellie said sharply. Don't you dare try to make this about your marriage not working out. This is about you lying and cheating and making Dad look like the bad guy when he wasn't. Max nodded in agreement. Dad's not perfect, but he's never lied to us. He's never made you look bad in front of other people. He's never cheated on you. You don't understand, Amanda said, her voice rising. You're just kids. Marriage is complicated. Sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes they need different things. Sometimes people cheat on their spouses and lie to their families, I said quietly. Let's call it what it is, Amanda. Amanda turned to face me, her eyes blazing with anger and desperation. You think you're so perfect, don't you? You think you've been the ideal husband all these years? No, I said. I don't think I'm perfect. I think I'm a man who worked hard to provide for his family, who tried to be a good husband and father, and who deserved better than to be systematically betrayed and humiliated by the woman he loved. Loved? Amanda's voice cracked on the word. Past tense? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd shared 17 years of my life with, who'd borne my children and shared my dreams and promised to love me in sickness and health, for better or worse. Amanda, I said finally, you erased whatever love I had for you the moment you decided that lying was easier than talking to me. You finished it when you turned our family dinners into public humiliation sessions meant to excuse your affair. But mostly, I continued, standing up and gathering the transcript pages, you destroyed any chance of salvaging this marriage when you involved our children in your deception, when you made them watch you perform your victim routine week after week, knowing they could see through your lies. I walked around the table and stopped in front of Amanda's chair. You want to know why our marriage was so difficult, Amanda. It wasn't because I was emotionally unavailable. It wasn't because I didn't appreciate you or didn't want to work on our relationship. I leaned down so that only she could hear my next words. Our marriage was difficult because you were cheating on me and lying to everyone we care about to justify it. Now everyone knows why. Amanda's sobs filled the silence that followed, but they sounded different now. Not the calculated tears of her performances, but the raw, ugly crying of someone whose carefully constructed world has just collapsed around them. Linda stood up slowly, her purse clutched tightly in her hands. Jennifer, we're leaving. Mom, wait, Amanda said, reaching for her mother's arm. Please don't go. We can talk about this. We can figure it out. Linda pulled her arm away. There's nothing to figure out, Amanda. You've made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences. Jennifer was already at the front door, her face pale with shock and embarrassment. Amanda, don't call me. Don't text me. I need time to process this. And I don't want to hear any more of your lies. Jennifer, please. But Jennifer was gone, the front door slamming behind her with a finality that seemed to echo through the house. Linda paused at the doorway, looking back at Amanda with an expression of profound disappointment. I raised you better than this, she said quietly. I taught you to be honest, to be faithful, to honor your commitments. I don't know who you've become, but you're not the daughter I thought I knew. And then she was gone too, leaving Amanda sobbing at the dining room table while Ellie and Max sat in stunned silence. I looked down at my wife, this woman who had spent months systematically destroying our marriage while making me out to be the villain, and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Amanda, I said quietly, I want you to pack a bag and leave tonight. She looked up at me through her tears. Pete, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling, we can... No, I said. We can't. This isn't a marriage problem, Amanda. This is a character problem, and I'm not interested in working it out. But the kids will be fine. They'll be better than fine, actually, because they won't have to watch you lie to their faces anymore. Amanda looked at Ellie and Max desperately. Kids, please, I made a mistake, but I'm still your mother. We're still a family. Ellie stood up slowly, her face set in hard lines. No, Mom, we're not still a family. You broke our family when you decided that lying and cheating was more important than being honest with the people who loved you. Max nodded in agreement. I don't want to see you right now, Mom. Maybe someday, but not right now. Amanda's face crumpled completely. Max, please. Go pack your bag, Amanda, I said firmly. You can stay at Greg's place. I'm sure he'll be happy to comfort you. Amanda stared at me for a long moment, as if she was waiting for me to change my mind, to soften, to offer her some path back from the wreckage she'd created. But I was done. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation, done with being cast as the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. Now everyone knows why marriage was so difficult for you, Amanda, I said, echoing my words from earlier. It's hard to be a good wife when you're busy being someone else's girlfriend. Amanda stood up slowly, her legs shaking. Pete, Go, I said. Just go. And finally, after months of performances and lies and calculated tears, Amanda Collins left the stage. The silence that followed her departure was different from the tense quiet that had filled the house during her performances. This was the silence of truth finally spoken, of secrets finally revealed, of a family finally free to be honest with each other. Ellie was the first to speak. Dad, she said quietly, I'm sorry Mom put you through all that. I'm sorry you and Max had to see it, I replied. Max looked up from the table, where he'd been staring at his hands. Dad, are you going to be okay? I looked at my children, these two remarkable people who'd somehow managed to see through their mother's deception and stay loyal to the truth, and felt something warm replace the cold finality in my chest. Yeah, I said. I think we're all going to be okay. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it.